Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my channel. This is A Marvelous, and this channel is called Hollywood Decoded. So, if this is your first time here, this channel is basically set up to kind of get behind the scenes and get to the symbolism and the real meanings of TV shows and movies. Because, as we know, what we see on TV and in movies is more than what's in front of us. There's a lot of hidden meanings, a lot of symbolism as to what these movies and TV shows mean. These shows are more like warning systems or preparatory systems to kind of condition us for what's going on or what's about to happen, or even shed light to what has happened in the past. So when you see these shows, it's important to kind of get the underlying message that's being communicated, because a lot of these shows represent, even though they were based in myth and scenarios that are not real, the symbolism and subject matter are very real, and they actually go on now, and they actually can predict some of the things that we go through in the future. So this particular episode is covering the TV show Charmed, and it's season 1, episode 3. Now, this video is loosely titled The Importance of Spiritual Protection and Understanding and Communicating with the Spirit World. Now, a lot of people, when they think of spirits and things like that, it kind of gets spooked out, thinking that, this is something that actually is just in movies, and that once someone dies, that's it. But that is not the case. My experience and tons of references and books, and that's just what it is, that the spirit world is very real, and the people that die, their spirits linger on, and there's transitional places throughout the universe that these spirits go. But they still linger on Earth because they have ties here. And when death happens, those ties don't just get cut off. So those ties have to be nurtured, those ties have to be remembered, and those ties really have to be spoken about, so these spirits can actually rest in peace, as they say. So in this episode, it's focused on an Asian gentleman who gets killed. Now, before he gets killed, it's his birthday. So there's a scene in which they introduce him, the character, and it's him and his mother. And when they show the individuals, the mother is in front of the house praying at the door. She's kneeling and she's saying a prayer in front of the door. And the son is trying to rush out because he's been Americanized, so he's trying not to really get too much into their culture. But the mother is saying this is important because spirits and evil spirits are real. And if you don't protect yourself and protect your house, they can harm you or even kill you. So he's brushing it off. He's like, "Ma, I'm 23 now. That's not going to happen." So in his arrogance and his denial of his culture, that's going to come back to hurt him later. And she tells him, she says, "Look, if your grandmother was alive, then you would definitely know the importance of this." Now, that was a crucial statement, because spiritual protection also comes from what your family members did before you got here. It is quite possible for previous generations to mess up future generations, and also give them rewards from acts that they've done, and it's passed down. This is very important when it comes to spirituality. A lot of times we see wills, we see inheritances. This is just a physical example of how generational positioning can actually favor generations in the future as they come along. But there are such things as generational. I don't want to use the word curse, but lack of a better word, the sins of the father do pass down to the sons, and vice versa. So you can actually position your generation and your bloodline for greatness, or you can actually set them up and doom them to fail by not doing certain things. So when she said that comment, it goes to show that they have a generational understanding of spirituality. And the son is trying to disconnect himself from that because he's Americanized. So she says, "Listen, you need to take this chain." There was a chain, a necklace that she had in front of the door that was just for protection. It was a little necklace with the animal on it. And that animal basically kept ghosts away from the house and evil spirits. She said, "You should take this because it's dangerous out there, and you want to protect yourself from evil spirits." He denies it. He says, "Ma, the evil spirits should be worried about me." So he doesn't take it. So he walks out there unprotected. Now, this is important. A lot of people, again, are the skeptics of these things, but this is very real. When you see churches, libraries, schools, when you see these institutions and you see these gargoyles and these animals and you see these statues, those aren't just there for decoration. Those are there to remember the ancestors that pretty much helped them build these things, and also they are protection archetypes and symbols. So when you see gargoyles, when you see these statues, when you see these pillars, and all of these things that stand in front of institutions, those are there for a reason. Excuse me. Those are there to protect the institution and make it favorable for whoever walks through. That's why sometimes you'll also see arches or pillars, because these are gateways that are set up physically, so when you walk through it, you have a whole different experience than you did before you walked in. So these things are set up deliberately. So gemstones are one of the basic forms of protection. There's different gemstones that have different energies to it. So basically, crystals, gemstones, these are things that are found naturally in earth that have their own energies, you know, and these energies they're fixed, but they can also be transformed with the person that comes in contact with it, because we're energy, these stones are energy, and crystals are energy. So when they max, it takes on its own energy of its own, and you have a lot of transformative powers. And one of those powers is actually protection. That's why it's important to actually get in touch with your surroundings, because these things are here to help us, and they have existed before us, and they're here with us. So this episode actually talks about that, because she gave him a necklace with a little animal on it. They call those talismans or amulets. These things have been used throughout history, but now we've been so, conditioned by technology and modern day things that we think that ancient things or things that are deemed ancient don't have an effect on us. But these modern TV shows show us that that's not the case. So it's very important to get gemstones. There's thousands of them with different effects, different energies, and based on what you want, the type of protection you want, you can take the gemstone that fits you. As you can see, I have the bracelets as well, because each one represents something different. And yes, this is real, because you'll start to have different experiences in your life that these gemstones bring out in connection with your energy, that you'll start to see a lot of things happen in your life. So this show speaks about that. So he leaves the house without any protection, and what happens? He gets killed. Not only does he get killed, but they burn his body. Now, as the episode unravels, they show that the reason why this person was killed was because he was being framed. He was being set up, because the individual that killed him was the leader of an Asian gang, and he wanted to fake his death. So he found this person that looked like him and killed him, put his ring on the dead body, so when they found it, they could make it seem like it was actually the leader of the gang that died. So this way he could fake his death and do what he needed to do. That was why he got killed. Now, had he had his protection, had he listened to his mother, it's possible that that might not have happened. Why take the chance? Because there are spirits out there that prey, and they look for vulnerabilities and weakness. So you need all the protection that you can get. So as this happens, he's now in spirit form. He's dead, but his spirit is now roaming. So the show focuses on the spirit of this person attempting to find closure with his death. Because it is an Asian saying, and according to this episode, that if a body is not buried at a certain point in time, then what we know as Satan or the devil or whatever you want to call it will take this soul and it will be in hell. So it was an Asian belief in this episode that a body had to be buried properly in a certain time, and if it wasn't, then this major evil spirit would take the soul, and the soul would be in hell instead of in heaven. So that's crucial. So this is also showing you the importance of beliefs in different culture and how real the spirit world is. Regardless of what you believe, there's things that exist that you might not believe or see. So this spirit now is spending the whole show trying to make sure that he gets word to his mother that A, he's dead, and B, that he's buried properly so his soul can rest in heaven and not in hell. So he finds the main characters of the show, which is these sisters that the show is based on, that are witches. He looks all over the city, couldn't find any psychics or anybody to help him. He comes across the main characters, the witches, and they decide to help him out. But in helping him out, they have certain obstacles. Okay, first they have to track down the individual that killed him, and they're the murderous people. So in doing so, the show starts to reveal different type of spiritual, I guess, practices and the importance of it. One of them that I found out that this was important and I kind of overlooked was the importance of birthdays. There was a scene in which he said that it's important to celebrate birthdays because you don't know when you'll be back. So birthdays are a form of ritual. People do it every year. It's a big celebration, and you remember when the person is alive. And I thought that scene was crucial because it gives more weight to the importance of celebrations and to how you memorialize individuals while they're living. So when they do die, you create these memories, and these memories still live on even when you die. In the spirit world, they understand those memories, and they can actually connect with you through these memories, also through dreams, things of that nature. So the importance of birthdays also stood out in this episode. So I thought that was crucial. So the main gist of this episode is to have spiritual protection. Don't just walk out blindly, look more into it. And I want to read from this book as an example. This is called Jewish Magic and Superstition. And I have other books. There's another book called The Spirits Book, and it also shows how spirits operate after they're dead. And they like to be remembered. They like their name to be mentioned. And they do linger around the geography in which they mostly inhabited when they were living. This is Spirits of the Dead. The ties that bind man to his home and his associates are insoluble. Even death cannot part them. Long after the body has departed this life, the spirit still frequents its ancient haunts, maintaining a shadowy connection with the world it knew and loved. This is the conception of death that has prevailed since man first had ideas on the subject, and it persists to this day more or less overtly. Among Jews, it was never completely ousted by the doctrine of the immortality of the soul. After all, according to the prevailing polypsychism of the Middle Ages, man is possessed of several spirits. The soul, or neshama, ascending to its maker, leaves behind the nefesh and the ruah, which are quite capable of performing the semi-terrestrial functions which tradition assigned to them. The neshama departs for heaven as soon as the body is interred. The nefesh wanders forlornly back and forth between its former home and the grave during the week after burial, and then also departs, but not for good. Its longing for the body that formerly housed it brings it back to the grave many times, until after a year or so, it is completely weaned away. The ruah never forsakes its corporeal shell, even in death, but forever remains with the body. This scheme often broke down because the three terms were used interchangeably, so that it is uncertain whether the reference is to the soul in heaven or the spirit on earth. But this much is abundantly clear. A spirit continues to inhabit the earth long after the body has moldered in the grave and comes into frequent contact with the living. So, how many spirits are around you is the question. So, I think this episode is important because it shows us that we should start to look at things from an overall holistic, circumspect point of view, and that things aren't just about I'm alive here and the dead is somewhere there. This is an interchanging, interlocking universe. So the spirit world is around us. They do communicate, and as you read and as you see the show, and there's tons of books and there's tons of experiences, the spirit world isn't something that's far removed from us. So we need to start plugging into that as a regular daily practice and not be so spooked out about it. They're putting these things in TV shows, and it's no coincidence that this happened in the 90s, because that's when a lot of the floodgates for this happened. But I'll touch on that in another video. So again, episode covered the importance of having protective amulets, right? Like gemstones, necklaces, different signatures, animals that have different meanings, things of that nature. The importance of what happens right after a person dies and what they go through and what your connection with that is and how important it is for you to connect through words, through offerings, giving what it is that they liked when they lived right after they died, because they feed off that. I know this sounds unbelievable, but the more you look into it, you'll start to see it. And this show also touched on a lot of murders that are set up and staged for whatever reason. That's a real thing that happens. A lot of the murders you see are not what they seem to be. And this episode touched on faking murders, which is very possible. And what was important is that towards the end of this episode, as they, kill the Asian mafia leader, as they avoid the soul of this dead person going into hell by this Yama, this Satan type deity, when they're at the grave, right, when he's buried properly, the spirit of his father shows up. And that is a sign that he is ascending to a higher place, that he avoided hell, and he's going to where the rest of his loved ones was, to a better place. And that's the symbol of his father. So this show had a lot of ancestral themes. The importance of following tradition, the importance of setting up your generation so that future generations are spiritually protected, and the importance of following the culture of your family, because whatever the belief is of your family, the longer it's practiced, the more power it has. And when that's continued generation over generation, you actually have blessings that you might not see, because the generations before you set up a system or belief just by believing in it, and everyone doing it in numbers, that can help you out even when you don't realize it. You might be bailed out of situations and not know why. You might be receiving luck and not know why. This is because generational practices have power, and the more that they're passed down and handed down, each generation benefits from that. An example of that, as I mentioned, is inheritances and wills. But this also happens in the spiritual world. You can actually be spiritually blessed so that your efforts might not be as difficult as the efforts of your parents or your grandparents. So it is important to establish for your bloodline, for your family, a systematic belief system, whatever it may be, and teach that to everyone in the family so they can keep practicing in that. So when loved ones die, their memories live on, and they actually can aid you in life so you can actually do better. So that's what this episode was about. And if you look through the whole episode, that's pretty much what it was. Had he followed his mother's advice, which was really from his grandmother's advice, then he could have avoided his whole fate that happened to him, being dead and framed. Because in the show, the chain and the amulet that the mother had, you'll see the son try to go back in the house as a spirit, and because the chain was hung on the door, it pushed him back. So that protective amulet in the show showed how it pushes spirits back. So when you see, like Jews, for instance, when you see this right here, called the mezuzah, right? When you see this, you'll go in mostly any Jewish building or any Jewish neighborhood, you will see this right in front of, on the side of the door or on the door, right? This is also a form of protection, right? And it also brings a lot of energies, positive energies from the spirit world to bless their endeavor. So you'll see a lot of cultures when they start a business, right? And they get an office space, they will actually do prayers in that building before anything is set up. And then they'll set up the furniture in a certain way so that the endeavor of that business can be prosperous. So this is a very deep show. So I encourage people, when you watch this episode and even when you watch TV, look for that. Look for ancestral themes, spirits coming back to talk to others. Look for these amulets and protections when you see people with pins, bracelets. Next time you go to a library or a school or any major institution, hell, here in New York, Grand Central, the whole thing is freaking protected with signs and symbols. That is for a reason. So set your home up, set your room up with these things. Do more research, and I put a list of references in the description section. But it's about protection, and it's about actually using things that we used to be spooked out about as practical, everyday things to enhance your life. So with that, thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, either way, leave feedback, comment, leave suggestions, and I'd love to interact with you all. Peace.